Welcome into the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. We're diving into the latest 49ers news and rumors, and here's what we have coming your way on today's show. Brian Griese was asked about the development of Trey Lance and if he's excited to work with him, going from the broadcast booth to the sideline to be the quarterback's coach in Kyle Shanahan's offense. We'll get to what he said about the future franchise quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Pro Football Talk and Mike Florio saying that Alex Mack probably going to retire, and if that's the case, that's a big void to fill on this 49ers roster considering the importance of that center position, and players are coming to the defense of Javon Kinlaw following the Grant Cohn and Javon Kinlaw beef. Pat McAfee show. Also talking about everything that transpired on YouTube a couple days ago. We'll get you caught up on all of the latest. We start off with what Brian Griese had to say about Trey Lance. He was asked about his development and if he's excited to work with him. He was also asked about Jimmy Garoppolo and said he has not spoken with Jimmy Garoppolo the entire offseason, which came as a little bit of a surprise to me, as Garoppolo has not communicated with Kyle Shanahan. He hasn't talked to George Kittle, and he hasn't talked to his current quarterback's coach in Brian Griese, but Griese focusing on the guys who are partaking in OTAs, and said this about Trey area. With respect to Trey Lance, in particular, meeting him and getting to know him over the last couple of months, he is an outstanding young man in so many ways. I'm excited to continue to get to know him both on and off the field. I'm excited that he comes to work every day and he's humble and he wants to get better. Now, we've talked a lot about Trey Lance, his development, and the fact that he has untapped potential, and he really is a dual-threat quarterback with so much ability. So you're looking at him right now partaking in OTAs, where he's looked really good all throughout the week, displaying changes in his mechanics as the arm motion is a little less loopy and more tight, and he's been a little bit more accurate because of that. So if you're excited about Trey Lance and this picture on your screen right now, the face, the future, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. From the quarterback to the man who may or may not be handing the football off to Trey Lance and snapping it to him in Alex Mack. We still don't know if he's going to be the center for the 49ers in 2022, and the 49ers don't know if he's going to be on this roster. Honestly, at this point, does Alex Mack even know if he's going to return to this team here this upcoming season? So he inked a 3-year deal before 2021. He's still undecided on his return. He got married during the offseason in Ireland, where a couple of teammates were able to attend his wedding, and they weren't able to unveil his plans. If Alex Mack were to retire, he would owe the 49ers a little bit of money, $2.45 million because of his signing bonus. And we're talking about a guy who's been one of the best centers in the National Football League for a decade plus and has rarely missed any games throughout his NFL career with the Cleveland Browns, where he was with Kyle Shanahan back in the day, back when Shanahan was a babyface killer, with the Atlanta Falcons, and now with the San Francisco 49ers. Alex Mack was so good that he earned accolades of being on the 2010s All-Decade team and is a 7-time Pro Bowler. So one of the best centers that we've seen in recent memory and one of the best centers of this century. Now, when Kyle Shanahan was asked about Alex Mack a couple weeks ago, he said this: I've talked to him here and there. I've got a good idea. I've been in touch with him throughout the offseason, through his wedding, through his honeymoon. He's in some other country right now, but I've got a pretty good idea of what he's doing. I'm going to leave that up to Alex, but I've got a pretty good idea. I think you guys do too. Kyle, I honestly have absolutely no clue what Alex Mack is going to do. But as we're about to show you here coming around the corner, I think it's imperative for him to return, because without him, the 49ers did not sign a center in free agency. They didn't address center in the NFL draft, and there are multiple question marks along that offensive line. Now, if Alex Mack retires, if any breaking news happens, if there's a juicy rumor out there on the Niners, you know who has you covered? Your boy right here and the 49ers Report. So make sure you subscribe, as we're a little more than 500 people people away from reaching an incredible milestone here on the channel of 60,000 subscribers. If you want videos every single day that are free, just hit that red subscribe button down below. Now, we're talking about Alex Mack because Pro Football Talk reported that it's most likely that Alex Mack is going to call it quits. They reported this on Thursday. It appears that with 2 years remaining on the deal, Mack is ready to walk away from the game. The 49ers have tiptoed around Mack's status. Recent remarks from Coach Kyle Shanahan make it more clear than ever that the team does not expect Mack to return. However, the team continues to defer to Mack when it comes to making that decision public. And of course, that's the right move, right? You don't want to force him into a situation where he has to make a choice tomorrow. This is a guy who's one of the best centers that we've seen in recent modern NFL history, and if he's a little bit unsure as to what he wants to do, he has earned the right to take his time in making that decision. But if the 49ers knew that Alex Mack was going to retire and he wasn't going to play any longer, why didn't they address center in the NFL draft? Why didn't they address center in free agency? There's a big hole at that center spot, as evidenced by the first-string offensive line unit that we've seen take the field during OTAs. Your starting offensive line across the board, and keep in mind Trent Williams not partaking in organized team activities. Mike McGlinchey is coming off that torn right quad, and Daniel Brunskill is dealing with knee tendonitis. But if this is your first-string offensive line during the heat of an NFL season, or even during an NFL game, it's a little bit problematic. Across the board, you're looking at Colton McKivitz, Aaron Banks, the rookie second-round pick out of Notre Dame from last year, who struggled at times during his rookie campaign. Jake Brendel would be the center replacement for Alex Mack if he doesn't come back. Jalen Moore, the other rookie from last year, who actually played well in moments, at right guard, and then Justin School, who's coming off an injury from last year as the starting right tackle and the replacement for Mike McGlinchey. This offensive line, it certainly is not ideal, especially when you're trotting out a quarterback in Trey Lance who's young, inexperienced, who needs fine-tuning. He's a little bit green. He only started 2 games last year, and you need to protect him because if you don't, that could really ruin his confidence. Now, we're just getting started on today's show because coming up right around the corner, after this Javon Kinlaw Grant Cohn beef, players came to the defense of Javon Kinlaw. We'll get to what they said coming up here in just a few moments, but if you're watching us live right now, we're going to be going live right after our live show on Call-In, and we're going to be going live once a week moving forward on the Call-In app, which is an audio social podcasting app that really does prioritize audience engagement. It's like Twitter Spaces, but even better. We're going to be doing weekly live shows. I did one over the weekend from a bachelor party in Arizona where I didn't see a single Arizona Cardinals fan, and you have an opportunity to actually call into the show, interact with me, spit your hottest 49ers take, or just ask me any question that you want. So you see that link on your screen right now, chatsports.com/49ers call-in. Use that, download the app, make a profile. That way you can join us live on our podcast on Call-In. Now we pivot to the biggest discussion in 49ers land over the last couple of days, which has taken over Twitter, it's taken over the internet, and it's taken over every single 49ers blog out there. That is the back and forth between Grant Cohn, media personality, and Javon Kinlaw, the former first-round pick and defensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, according to Grant Cohn, they met in John Lynch's office, and according to Cohn, John Lynch had arranged that meeting, and they squashed their beef. Now, that was according to Grant Cohn, not according to Javon Kinlaw, because he posted on his Instagram story, "Grant, I shook your hand for my organization. Nowhere was anything squashed, and you know that. Stop capping, dog." So according to Grant, the beef is squashed. According to Javon Kinlaw, he ain't moving on, and no beef has been squashed. Now, players in the aftermath of this situation in which Javon Kinlaw lost his cool, he went ballistic and went off on Grant Cohn, have come to the defense of Javon Kinlaw. We're going to run through just a couple of replies, and this is something that is featured in the New York Post. It's been talked about on Outkick by Clay Travis. It's even been talked about on the Pat McAfee show who is throwing some haymakers toward Grant Cohn. So too have some players on the 49ers roster, like George Kittle. He said this: "It's crazy to me that someone who was allowed into our building has the mindset and the goal to antagonize and irritate players with their end game of being this. I thought players and reporters were supposed to work together. Being in this building, let alone in this league, is an opportunity. It is not a right. People get really comfortable typing behind a screen," and then George Kittle said a lot more on his Instagram story. And we also know that Eric Armstead has taken issue with what Grant Cohn has said in the past. He basically said the same thing that George Kittle said, very surprised that Grant is allowed back into the building. Now, for anybody saying that Cohn should have his media pass revoked or he shouldn't be allowed back in the building, I think that's way too sensitive. I mean, he is entitled to his own opinions, and he is an opinionist in addition to being a journalist and a media member. But Deebo Samuel did block Grant Cohn back a couple weeks ago, and he also put Eric Armstead's quote on his Instagram story saying, "Nah, for real, I've been had to block Grant. He just does the most for real." As for Tabor Pepper, when the long snapper is getting involved, you know it's really real. So basically, he posted a quote from Grant, and I'm not sure if Grant was joking about the fact of maybe trying to get fined if Javon Kinlaw were to hit him. That's not something I personally would have said. If the beef happened, then the beef happened. I'm not trying to play victim by any means, but Tabor Pepper did say, "The faithful can arrange an early retirement if the fan base boycotts your low-effort shit posting that you call journalism," because Grant did threaten to retire, said that he could retire if Javon Kinlaw were to get physical with him. And honestly, if there was a fight, I'm not taking many people in the NFL ahead of Javon Kinlaw, let alone a media member, because that dude, he is a straight-up load. Brandon Ayuk also voicing his opinions on the subject matter. If you're going to say something about somebody, stand on that ish. Don't backpedal and start playing victim. Jaquiski Tartt, the former Niner who may become another Niner if he were to sign in free agency. LMFAO, crazy how players become the bad guy for standing up for themselves. Media and social media has a huge influence on players' narratives, allowing anyone to speak on your name with no accountability for what they say. Now, I voiced my opinions on this back yesterday. I said both people are to blame, and Grant isn't for everybody. He's an antagonist. He has some opinions, and some of those opinions will remind you a lot of what Skip Bayless says on the air sometimes. You're like, what? He really said that? And he has not shied away from taking punches and uppercuts on players and being very critical of their performances. But if you say those things, you got to receive the backlash, and Javon Kinlaw gave him the backlash. He gave him the heat, and did Kinlaw go a little bit too far? Was he a little bit too emotional for my liking? Yeah, a little bit. But can you understand where Javon Kinlaw's coming from? This dude was homeless at one point in his life. He goes to South Carolina, where he puts together a really impressive career. He's a first-round pick for San Francisco, coming off a Super Bowl year, and he hasn't been able to reach those expectations of being that first-round pick because he's been injured the last couple of years, and I'm sure that he wants nothing more than to prove to everybody out there that he doesn't suck, that he is a good football player, that he was worthy of that first-round selection. He just needs to be able to stay healthy in order to prove that, and he hasn't up to this point. I would be frustrated too. So we asked this question yesterday. I'm going to ask it again. Whose side are you on now that you see a lot of 49ers players coming to the defense of Javon Kinlaw and John Lynch setting up a meeting between these two guys? Is it GC for Grant Cohn, JK for Javon Kinlaw? I'm going to continue to run my YouTube channel, and I greatly appreciate all of the support that you give me right here on the 49ers Report. You can continue for us to give you great opinions, great content, and free daily videos covering the latest 49ers news and rumors right here on the channel. And subscribe as we are approaching 60,000 subscribers.